This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Assisted suicide in the crosshairs. Good afternoon. Welcome aboard. Candlelight vigils are happening all over New York this week to try and persuade Governor Hochul not to sign a controversial doctor-assisted suicide bill. She has until the end of the month to decide. Last night, pro-lifers showed up in Tonawanda and at the state capitol in Albany. Tonight, they'll be in New York City and Syracuse holding similar protest rallies.
Assisted suicide is not health care.
Dr. Stanley Bukowski has 40 years experience in treating the terminally ill.
Assisted suicide is against the principles that have been the foundation of medical care in Western society for over 2,000 years.
He says in countries where assisted suicide is legal, the overall suicide rate is higher.
Assisted suicide cannot be contained. We've seen that in other countries, Belgium, the Netherlands, Canada. There are horrors there because once you establish the principle, you have to start expanding it more and more and more because people demand it. They think that it's treatment.
Wheelchair-bound disability rights activist Todd Verwerk worries that assisted suicide will put a bullseye on the backs of people like him.
I don't want somebody coming around doing some sort of financial evaluation that decides that giving me pills to allow me to check out is cheaper than the services that would keep me at home and in my community.
The protesters are calling on the governor to veto a bill that would allow terminally ill adults to request life-ending medication. Critics fear state-sanctioned suicide will lead to elder abuse, abuse against the disabled, and rationed health care. Get ready to take the polar plunge. Meteorologist Kevin Williams calling for uncommon cold after sunset tonight. Nighttime lows will dip into the single digits with below zero wind chills. A frigid Friday's on tap. Temperatures will moderate some for the weekend, but not by much. We're back into the deep freeze early next week, and it stays uncommonly cold right through the middle part of December. Laid off in America. Reporter Michael Wallace says layoffs in this country have reached a new 5-year high.
The outplacement firm Challenger Gray and Christmas says there were more than 71,000 layoffs announced in November, pushing the total for the year above 1.1 million. That's the most since 2020, the first year of the pandemic. And it's a 54% jump from the same 11-month period a year ago. Companies that are slashing their payrolls have cited corporate restructuring, tariffs, and the switch to AI.
Navy Admiral Frank Mitch Bradley is briefing members of the Senate and House Armed Services Committee today about that controversial military strike on a Venezuelan drug boat back in September. It was Bradley who ordered the use of lethal force, which killed 11 suspected narco-terrorists. 9 died in the first strike. 2 survivors were killed when a second attack was ordered. Some lawmakers claim the incident could rise to the level of a war crime. Missouri Republican Eric Schmidt is not among them.
The Democrats are playing a very dangerous game here and wanting to litigate the powers of the commander-in-chief that are very clearly spelled out in the Constitution.
But it's not just Democrats who are demanding answers. Kentucky Republican Rand Paul.
If there's video of people clinging to the remnants of a boat and being bombed, I think that image is one that will shock American people.
White House Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly says the Trump administration's doing everything in its power to protect the American people from dangerous drugs.
This president hasn't taken any options off the table when it comes to carrying out his mandate to eliminate this scourge of illicit drugs coming into our homeland. So he's going to continue to do that to protect families across the United States from these illicit narcotics that tragically are killing far too many people in our country.
The Trump administration's positioned a dozen warships and 15,000 troops within striking distance of Venezuela. The White House adds that land strikes on drug cartels is an option that's being considered to stem the flow flow of dangerous narcotics into this country. A new Pentagon Inspector General report concludes Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth jeopardized sensitive data with his use of the Signal app in a military operation back in March. Correspondent Charlie D'Agata.
This past spring, Hegseth sent detailed plans about airstrikes in Yemen to top national security officials on Signal, including the times F-18s would launch and when the first bombs will definitely drop.
The Signal app scandal came to light after a journalist was accidentally added to a chat group. Minnesota's decade-long Somali fraud scandal continues to ruffle feathers in the land of 10,000 lakes. FBI Director Kash Patel.
We've got 78 people that have been arrested pursuant to our investigation along with the interagency, and that investigation is very much ongoing. We are not finished. It was one of the largest fraud scams ever committed in the state of Minnesota history.
Dozens of Somali immigrants are charged with stealing $1 billion in taxpayer money meant for federally funded welfare programs. Some of those dollars were funneled to the Somali terror group Al-Shabaab. Former Minnesota State Senator David Gaither.
The Somali community is becoming a very powerful voting bloc in Minneapolis. And if you want to win a statewide race in Minnesota, you've got to carry Minneapolis. In order to carry Minneapolis, you have to carry the Somalis. And they have become a force to be reckoned with.
The Manhattan Institute's Chris Ruffo broke the news about the Somali fraud in Minnesota.
The traditional American story is that immigrant groups would come over, they would learn the American customs, they would learn how to speak English, they would try to assimilate into the culture. And if they had bad elements in their own culture, it was incumbent upon them to reject that kind of criminal activity and then to correct it. But in Minneapolis, we have precisely the opposite. The Somali community leaders like Ilhan Omar are defending the very people who committed billions of dollars in fraud.
The FBI, Homeland Security, and the U.S. Treasury Department all involved in the Minnesota fraud investigation. 1.5 million bags of shredded cheese sold at Target, Walmart, and Aldi's is being recalled. Those packages of cheese could contain metal fragments. The FDA says the cheese in question was sold under dozens of brand names in over 30 states, including New York and Pennsylvania. The cheese originated from the Great Lakes Cheese Company in Hiram, Ohio. The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree got lit up last night in New York City. That tree lighting ceremony on NBC featured performances from Mark Anthony, Michael Bublé, and the Rockettes. These tourists say there's nothing like it, witnessing that shimmer of light in Midtown Manhattan.
New York is so beautiful. It's our first time flying here from Missouri.
You know, there's no better place to be than like here.
Me and my Nana used to do it together, and my Nana passed away, so I take a piece of the tree and I bring it to her gravesite.
How cool is that? The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree will remain lit until mid-January. Still to come on the Noon Report, lake flakes fallen, bitter cold coming, and Shapiro is fuming.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams, and Arctic cold rush is underway. We'll have the latest numbers, the complete forecast, coming up in 10.
All right, Kevin, we'll see you then. Winter weather advisories are in effect until 7 tonight for ski country. Those of you who live downwind of Lakes Erie and Ontario expect another 3 to 5 inches of lake effect by tonight. Those winds will be gusting to 35 miles per hour at times, creating whiteout conditions. With bitter cold on the way, auto experts are sounding off on car care tips for winter. AAA's Elizabeth Carey says car batteries are a major concern this time of year.
The life of a car battery in this area is about 3 to 5 years. Sometimes there's no warning. Your battery might go. You just come out one day and it's completely dead. But sometimes there are signs like an odd noise when it's turning over or a churning sound, or maybe the lights seeming a little bit dimmer.
Car batteries can lose up to a third of their power in freezing temperatures. Carey suggests you avoid running the heater, defroster, and turning on the headlights all at once when you start up your vehicle. This will avoid putting extra strain on the battery. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro is blasting a new book by former Vice President Kamala Harris. Shapiro unleashing on Harris during an interview yesterday, claiming the book, 107 Days, contains untruths about him. Media critic Joe Concha.
Obviously, there was some friction between Kamala and Josh Shapiro, and Shapiro, who was sitting at north of 60% approval in a state, Pennsylvania, that Kamala absolutely had to win. It shows why he wasn't chosen to be her running mate. Instead, she went with Tim Walz. In the end, I have a feeling that Kamala was probably told to juice up some stories in order to sell this book that is not selling very well, by the way, despite a lot of hype. And now Shapiro is fighting back.
The governor was on the short list of potential Harris VP picks last year. She claims that he wanted to be a co-president instead of a vice president. Shapiro calls that a blatant lie and says Harris is just trying to sell books. Controversy is brewing in Brighton, New York, over plans to install synthetic turf fields at the high school. The district says bad weather has made grass surfaces unplayable and downright dangerous. But some parents say it is the turf fields that are dangerous because they contain dangerous chemicals.
I think when it comes to kids' health, if the choice is ease of maintenance or keeping kids away from known carcinogens, as a parent, to me, that's an easy choice. It's about protecting kids.
But Brighton Superintendent Kevin McCowan is confident the turf is safe.
Matter of fact, we've provided the feedback on each part of the turf, both the synthetic surface, the underlayment, the pad, and the rubber infill, that they are not manufactured using PFAs.
PFAs are man-made forever chemicals that can increase the risk of certain cancers. 87% of Brighton voters approved the turf fields last year. The district hopes to begin using them in the spring of 2027. Pennsylvania is the only state in the country that does not allow local police to use radar to catch speeders. Only the state police have that authority. Michelle Collins from Wilkes-Barre can't understand why.
It's kind of stupid. It's a more accurate way of detecting someone's speed. They should be allowed to use it.
State Senator Lisa Baker sponsoring a bill that would give local cops the power to use radar in order to enforce the speed limit.
For me, it's an effective tool. It's the safest and most accurate speed timing device.
Opponents fear municipal police might use radar to set up speed traps that are aimed more at raising revenue than making the road safe. The proposed authorization includes measures that would tightly regulate how local police would use radar when and if they get that green light. Some anxious moments yesterday on the shores of Lake Ontario in western New York. A car, for whatever reason, leapt the road in Monroe County and wound up in the lake. And by the lake, we mean Lake Ontario, one of the Great Lakes. Lakeshore Fire Chief Jason Franz says first responders worked fast to get the driver out of the water.
The car left the road, traveled through the air for a period of time before breaking through the ice. You've got roughly 16 minutes to be in the water.
France credits a passerby who attempted to rescue that driver before first responders arrived.
You don't see a lot of people putting themselves in harm's way to help somebody out, and they did that today. I'm not saying that was the greatest choice or the worst choice, but it was good of them to make the attempt.
The driver escaped serious injury despite that harrowing ordeal yesterday. More Americans are turning to artificial intelligence for help with their holiday shopping.
A 2025 survey from TalkDesk found 75% of shoppers plan to use artificial intelligence to find deals and 67% to get gift ideas. The information comes from product pages, reviews, prices, and a user's previous interaction with the chatbot. What's the takeaway? 56% of shoppers say they felt happier and less anxious about their holiday shopping. I'm Sarah Walters.
Thank you, Sarah. No need for AI to get to where we're going next. Sports is next. It's the 2-minute drill right here on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, it was not a good night for the Buffalo Sabres, and it was for the Philadelphia Flyers. Travis Konechny, Noah Cates, and Bobby Brink each had a goal and an assist. Trevor Zegras and Owen Tippett also lit the lamp for the Flyers in their 5-2 victory. For Buffalo, the goal scorers were Jason Zucker and Bowen Byram. Sabres actually had a 1-0 lead in this game before the Flyers scored 3 goals in 59 seconds, all in the first period, and they kind of seized control of the game after that. Also skating to wins, the Stars, Canadiens, Mammoth, and Caps. On to the NBA, Karl Anthony Towns had himself a night, scoring 35 points and hauling down 18 rebounds. He paced the Knicks to a 119-104 win at the Garden. Jalen Brunson added 26 points in the defeat of the Charlotte Hornets. New York now 14-7. They are 11-1 at Madison Square Garden, and they sit just a half game out of first place behind the Toronto Raptors. In Chicago, Michael Porter poured in 33 points and grabbed 10 boards to help Brooklyn edge the Bulls 113-110. Noah Clowney chipped in with 20 points. The win for the Nets makes it back-to-back victories. Elsewhere, the Trailblazers 122-110 winners over the Cavs. The Nuggets beat Indiana 135-120. Jamal Murray exploded for 52 points in that one. The Spurs by a bucket over the Magic 114-112. The Hawks fell to the Clippers 115-92. Houston took down Sacramento 121-95. Milwaukee 113, Detroit 109, and Dallas came out on top of Miami 118-108. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy, thank you very much. Still to come on the Noon Report for Thursday. Big chill on the way, Google's Word of the Year, and state-sanctioned suicide.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Well, the season has begun, specifically the season of complaining that the world has forgotten the reason for the season. However, the reason that many seem to want restored has more in common with Hallmark than Christ. While celebration, family, and friendship are indeed essential aspects of the holiday season as it is culturally practiced, the church calendar offers the season of Advent as a way of preparing our hearts and minds for the feast of Christmas. Essential to the season of Advent is to remember and rehearse the story of Scripture, particularly those parts that promise God's salvation. To this end, Michael Card's album, The Promise, is a staple in the Stonestreet household this time of year. And for the more musically gifted in our home, of which I am not one, there's also the commitment of time to listen again and again to Handel's brilliant Messiah. Speaking of brilliant, the witty G.K. Chesterton was a big fan of Christmas, and in 2023, Ryan Smith wrote Winter Fire, Christmas with G.K. Chesterton, which is a delightful mix of Chesterton essays, articles, and poems and meditations. And of course, closer to Christmas Day, don't forget about G.K. Chesterton's Letters from Father Christmas. For those who are interested in going deeper, the 2024 book by Ryan Putman, Conceived by the Holy Spirit, The Virgin Birth in Scripture and Theology, is one of those rare works for both laity and theological professionals. In it, Putnam describes Advent and the birth of Christ by reaching across the story of Scripture and into various elements of the practical Christian walk. And Daniel Spanger's Advent is the story, seeing the nativity through Scripture, combines rich theology with a day-to-day reading list for the entire month of December. From the first chapters of Genesis to the concluding verses of Revelation, Spanger describes, and I quote, Christmas as worldview. Here's how he puts it, quote, the history of the universe is a story with a specific plot. It began with a garden of beauty and goodness. God will bring the universe to completion as it was designed, Yahweh's permanent eternal home among his people, end quote. And there's also Dan Darling's 2019 book, The Characters of Christmas, the unlikely people caught up in the story of Jesus. It's a wonderful challenge to anyone too familiar with the nativity story, if that's possible. Darling reminds his readers how God used ordinary people to do the extraordinary things, including Joseph and Mary, Zechariah and Elizabeth, Simeon and Anna. As Darling describes it in the book, quote, this is the real story of Christmas, the heart of Christianity, brokenness and new birth. The same God who birthed life into Sarah's dead womb had breathed life into Elizabeth and Mary. And this baby, Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, breathes new birth into his people, end quote. Yes, this season is certainly bigger than the commercialism and the decorations, but it is even more than time with family and friends. See, everything that matters in this world matters because it ultimately finds its significance in the work that God is doing in his world. And Advent is to remind us all of God's work of redemption. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
All right, John, thank you for that. And let's head outside next. Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life weather forecast for this afternoon. Areas of Lake Stowe and Blowing Stowe. There'll be a couple, 3 inches of fresh fluff falling in favored belt areas southeast and east of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Temperatures heading down today, in some cases below 20. In terms of wind chill, in the single digits to near zero in spots by the time we get to this evening. Then for tonight, frigid, moonlight, low temps, single digits for most, near records for some. Tomorrow, clouds, some sun, highs in the 20s. Mostly cloudy Saturday, some afternoon flurries for some, and a high in the 30s.
All right, thank you. Great work, Kevin, at the Weather Center. This is the Noon Report. I'm your host, Bob Price, and as Kevin mentioned, uncommon cold will be our weather reality for the next couple of days, and that is our top story today. Thursday, the 4th of December, reporter Shaq Brewster says the big chill was quite evident today in Chicago as well.
We brought our official thermometer in. It shows the temperature between 10 and 15 degrees right now, but when you factor in that wind chill, it feels like it is 4 degrees below zero. These brutal temperatures not just being felt in the Midwest, but extending all the way into the Northeast.
The bitter burst of cold will relent a little bit come the weekend, but we're back aboard the Siberian Express early next week. Winter weather advisory in effect till 7 tonight for areas downwind of the Great Lakes. Uproar is growing over those deadly U.S. airstrikes on Venezuelan drug boats back in the fall. The Navy admiral who ordered the use of lethal force testifying today before the House and Senate Armed Services Committee. President Trump calls the military mission justified because the targets were narco-terrorists.
Whoever are piloting those boats, they're guilty of trying to kill people in our country.
Some on Capitol Hill, however, think the military action might have been a war crime. A bill that would allow doctor-assisted suicide for terminally ill adults is awaiting action from New York Governor Kathy Hochul. She's proposed adding amendments to the Medical Aid in Dying Act, which signals to some that she is leaning toward signing that bill. Too bad, says pro-life activist Jessica Rogers, who argues assisted suicide could lead to rationed health care.
In almost 30 years in Oregon, this has been legal. We have conditions like diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, anorexia as qualifying conditions under that law. And we don't need that here in New York. We need to protect our neighbors.
Governor Hochul's proposed adding a residency requirement to the assisted suicide bill, which would mean only New York residents would be allowed to end their lives with the help of a doctor. The governor must sign or veto the bill by December 31st. A massive fraud scandal in Minnesota has that state's large Somali population in the crosshairs. Most of the accused in this COVID-era scandal are Somali migrants. Jonah Kaplan with CBS News has more from Minneapolis.
Minnesota is reeling from a fraud scandal involving $1 billion siphoned from multiple federal programs during the COVID pandemic. In the past 3 years, 87 people have been charged, 61 convicted, most of Somali descent.
Somalians ripped off that state for billions of dollars.
The president lashed out at Minnesota's Somali community during Tuesday's cabinet meeting at the White House, saying he doesn't want them in the country and called them garbage.
The U.S. Treasury Department is investigating Minnesota Governor Tim Walz's handling of the scandal. Some of the stolen money was funneled to the Somali terror group Al-Shabaab. Google today released its list of the top internet searches of 2025. And topping the list this year was the word Gemini, which is Google's AI chatbot. Google says the Charlie Kirk assassination was the top trending news topic of 2025. Denver, Colorado is celebrating sports history in the month of November. Check this out. The Broncos, Nuggets, and Avalanche combined for the best single-month performance ever by an NFL, NBA, and NHL city. Fans like this guy in Denver are happy to share in those winning ways.
This is the best time to be out here. I think Colorado sports is spot on for sure.
For sure, he says Denver's Big Three experienced unprecedented success during the month of November. The Broncos are riding a 9-game win streak. They're tied for the best record in the NFL. The Nuggets are in 5th place in the NBA's Western Conference with a 15-6 record. And the Avalanche have just one loss on the season, with Nathan McKinnon leading the NHL in scoring. Colorado's Governor Jared Polis says no other state can match his when it comes to winning in November. You're listening to the Noon Report, a Thursday edition on Family Life.
This is Faith Under Fire. We take you straight to the voices on the front lines of religious battlegrounds. I'm your host, news anchor Sarah Harnish. With me today, Alliance Defending Freedom's Senior Counsel, Caleb Dalton. We're talking abortion pill reversal. It was a huge win this week in the Second Court of Appeals. 11 faith-based crisis pregnancy centers versus the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James. In a unanimous decision, the court ruled in favor of the pregnancy centers. They cannot be silenced when informing moms of the ability to reverse an abortion that they've started by taking the at-home abortion pill, mifepristone. Caleb, tell me what happened this week.
Absolutely, Sarah. New York, through its Attorney General, Letitia James, has been attempting to censor pro-life pregnancy centers because they tell women about the option of abortion pill reversal. This all started back in May of 2024 when the Attorney General sued 11 pregnancy centers in New York, attempting to censor their speech. And we were grateful to have the opportunity to represent NIFLA and Gianna's House, an options care center there in New York, to push back against that censorship. And this week, the Second Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed that the Attorney General can't censor that information that pregnancy centers are trying to share with women.
Would you say that this is a small victory?
I think this is a great victory on behalf not only of pregnancy centers, but on behalf of women. Women deserve to have information about this life-saving option. And what the Attorney General was trying to do here was to keep them from even hearing about it in the first place. What the centers did was share information, and that allows a woman to then go talk with her doctor and decide, if I regret my decision to take the first abortion pill, is there an option to potentially save my baby's life? And the Attorney General was trying to keep women from even hearing about that option. If she was truly even pro-choice, as she claims to be, she should be for this speech, not against it.
Yeah, it seems very ironic because literally the word choice is in the entire abortion movement, is that women have a right to their bodies and have a right to choices. And yet by silencing these crisis pregnancy centers across New York, you are effectively taking away the choice to reverse an abortion that you may have already started. It's the opposite of what they believe in.
That's right. And the irony is when you have an Attorney General who claims that, I think the true colors come out. And we see this as part of a larger trend of hostility toward pro-life pregnancy centers across the nation.
You've been in the courtroom and been there as this has been playing out. Do you think that the court seems favorable to the arguments that these crisis pregnancy centers are making?
It was a unanimous decision by the Court of Appeals, affirming a good decision by the district court in this case, and we're hopeful that trend continues because the reality is the First Amendment protects this speech. The centers have the right to tell women about this information, and women have the right to hear about it. We have, in this case, a mother whose baby is alive today because she took that progesterone treatment, and she wouldn't have heard about it if the Attorney General had her way. In fact, the Attorney General sued the pregnancy center that helped her save her baby's life.
What happens next with the case?
So at this point, the Attorney General could choose to appeal to the full Second Circuit Court of Appeals, or the Attorney General could attempt to appeal to the United States Supreme Court, or the third option is for it just to go back to the district court where this case started about a year and a half ago. I think this really goes to one of the core issues of the First Amendment. The court didn't address the studies. The court just said, look, this is protected speech, and the Attorney General hasn't met her burden to show why it should be restricted. The Attorney General's argument is basically, well, I don't agree with those studies, and I think more studies are needed. That's not enough to censor life-saving information.
So the ruling this week says that these pregnancy centers are free to tell women about progesterone while the lawsuit continues. What does that mean?
We really don't know. It could be the end if the Attorney General settled the case and said, I will agree to a permanent injunction and I won't come after the pregnancy centers. That could resolve the case. I don't know what the Attorney General is going to do after this, but the court's holding is very strong. The center's speech is protected, and for the Attorney General to prevail in this case, she would have to overcome what's called strict scrutiny. That's the highest level of scrutiny you can have in a constitutional right. The reality is the facts just aren't there for the attorney to justify censoring this information.
How can we as Christians pray for these faith-based crisis pregnancy centers?
Well, we can pray for protection for them spiritually and physically, pray for emotional and spiritual stamina. They're dealing every day with very difficult situations. They're ministering to women in need who are at points in their lives that they never anticipated being. And they're truly being Christ's hands and feet on the ground to women in need. And we should pray for blessing and encouragement for them and support them in every way that we can.
Learn more at adflegal.org.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Faith Under Fire airs Thursdays during the Noon Report or online anytime at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or familylife.org.
A very good afternoon to all. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. Arctic air is spreading into our region now, the coldest of the season to date. And the result, we've got a hug your honey warning in effect for tonight. It is going to be bitterly cold. Not long lasting, but definitely impactful, helping to generate some wind-blown lake snow in parts of the area as well. For this afternoon, we'll have clouds, sunny intervals, flurries, and areas of lake snow and blowing snow. There'll be a couple 3 inches of fresh fluff falling in favored belt areas southeast and east of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Temperatures heading down today, in some cases below 20. Afternoon temperatures are also dropping in terms of wind chill in the single digits to near zero in spots by the time we get to this evening. Then for tonight, frigid, early flurries and moonlight, low temps single digits for most, near records for some. Tomorrow, clouds, some sun, highs in the 20s. Mostly cloudy Saturday, some afternoon flurries for some, and a high in the 30s.
All right, thank you very much, Kevin. Finally at noon.
Dad, that thing wouldn't fit in our yard.
Not going in our yard, Russ. It's going in our living room.
It is the latest trend in holiday decorating. Here's reporter Bree Tennis.
According to House Beautiful, holiday decorations this year are going tacky. They say the uglier the better. To be on trend, reach for full-on 70s metallic ornaments. Everything mismatched, rainbow lights, and tinsel. Lots of tinsel. The thinking behind this year's tacky Christmas trend is a throwback to nostalgia of our childhood. Simple, colorful, no rules, and somehow it could be just right. I'm Bree Tennis.
I love the sound of that. Bringing back the tacky Christmas. Thank you, Bree. And that's our world. The world we live in. Thursday, December 4th. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report. Heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.